Michelle Marie McGrath. Welcome to Unclassified Woman, and today I'm talking to Cherie Hausler. Dividing her time between freelance food writing and styling in Sydney and the restaurant she co-owns in Bangkok, Cherie made a tea change to include the Barossa Valley when she decided the only way to balance her food-filled life was to add an organic veggie patch into the mix. Juggling the renovation of a 160-year-old bluestone farmhouse in the Barossa Valley amongst designing menus, regular contributions to magazines and the odd TV show has given Cherie the perfect fresh air and open country base to collect seasonal fruits and herbs to hand blend her tea range, Scullery Made. Dedicated to the experience of good food in its entirety, Cherie believes that there are very few things in life that can't be helped by a proper cup of tea. Now, as a Brit who has grown up with the kettle boiling 24 hours a day and being a bit of a teaaholic myself, I wholeheartedly agree, and I highly recommend Cherie's fabulous teas. So check them out at scullerymade.org, and I do hope you enjoy the conversation. So great to have you here today.
Thank you. It's nice to chat to you. I always love chatting to you, so that wasn't a difficult thing to do.
I'm so interested to hear your perspective on this topic because I feel it's quite unusual in comparison to the other women that I've talked to up until this point. And so, Cherie, would you mind sharing a bit about your background and whether you've not had a child due to a personal choice or whether it was circumstantial?
Yeah, sure. Oh gosh, it's a big intake of breath, isn't it? This topic, I just find this topic is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
It's the biggest decision. It's the biggest contemplation. For me, there is nothing bigger than considering having a child or not having a child.
Absolutely.
And so, I should premise this by saying, because I think that we all have such different opinions and this is such a massive topic and it is so completely emotional. I mean, we could all stand back and say, oh, let's take the emotion out of it. And honestly, there'd be nothing left, you know? I just want to premise it by saying that obviously these are my points of view and this is not how I'm thinking that everyone should live or this is the ultimate, decision-making process. It's none of that. It's just how I've gone about things. So I haven't had a child and that is it has been a completely conscious decision. It has been the biggest decision, as I said, in my life. And I think one of the greatest misunderstandings is when you let somebody know that you don't have a child and that is because you have decided not to have a child, not for any circumstance beyond your control, that a lot of people then quickly join that next dot in imagining that you don't like children.
Absolutely.
And I adore children. I adore humans. I adore animals. I adore plants. I adore this earth, and so that suggestion needs to be ruled out straight away. I adore children so much that has, in an ironic way, been part of my decision making in not creating a child and not deciding to have a child, because my goodness, there are so many children that don't have an opportunity of love and kindness and support, let alone food, let alone shelter, let alone clean water, all these things that, my God, my heart just absolutely breaks when I start to look at that kind of stuff. both, on a screen from a statistical point of view, but then in the travels that I've done, bearing witness to children suffering that is beyond anything that your heart can contemplate. It's just that immediate, overwhelming connection to wanting to save that little person, to give them everything that they need. And in recognizing that within myself, I've been able to almost in the same way that I would approach any extraordinarily exciting creative project in my life. I've almost tried, and I haven't exactly mastered this, which is why I was saying earlier, I haven't got it all figured out, but this is just how I've bumbled through. I did the same with my decision-making process around having kids. I looked at it as one of the most exciting projects that I could embark upon. And what would I need in order to fulfill my role in that project, and what would that project perhaps offer? Where would that take me, us, my husband, our interaction with the greater world, all of those things. Can you tell that I think about things quite
But as we said, I mean, there is no bigger decision.
I'm still trying to figure out if the deep thinking is a good or bad thing. Oh my God, I tend to go into things like a little mole going down a hole, and it's just like, oh wow, how did I end up here? But this is the way that I've approached it. And ultimately, when I took into account all of the information that I could garner, in the same way that I do with any of my, creative projects, it was something that I decided, no, this isn't something I'm going to embark upon. And that sounds simplistic. The arrival at that point was anything but simplistic. I mean, it could not be a more complex decision-making process. And I think that it's extraordinary that we have the choice. I think it's extraordinary. And for that, I'm exceedingly grateful. But on the same hand, because I'm adopted, I have this other aspect where I'm just eternally grateful that my biological mother, Susan, I've met her, she's great. She's just this wild hippie who, just as so many girls, young girls, so in love, that beautiful emotion of first love and the excitement of everything that is going on in your body. And of course a baby comes from that, because that's the brilliance of unity, of two people and their bodies speaking that extraordinary language to each other in that moment of conception. But I'm eternally grateful she didn't make an alternative decision, because obviously I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't have had this amazing life and all the experiences. But with adoption, it's just because it has been such a brilliant thing for me, and I know that there are plenty of people who haven't had a great experience with adoption. And so I'm certainly not about to suggest, and then this is the next thing that we should all be doing. It worked in my life, and I've seen it work in others, but I have also seen that it hasn't been great for some people. So with adoption, though, comes this extra sense, because the notion of creating a child, carrying that child is, I mean, to me, there is nothing more sacred than that. That is a union and a bond that nothing comes close to. And I'm not just talking about humans. I'm talking about any mother. I have seen cows give birth. I've seen sheep give birth, and dogs and horses, and it is the same everywhere across board. That union between a mother and child is absolutely extraordinary. But what was proven to me with being adopted, and what I am a testament to, and what my life literally is the knowledge that it is an unconditional love that is not just restricted to biology.
Yeah.
That I grew up being told, and I always thought that this, as an adult, always thought this was such a lovely way of putting it, that my parents said to me, out of all of the children in the world, we chose you. And instead of me ever feeling that, oh, I'm adopted, that's not as good as everyone else, I'm not enough, that they flipped it instantly to me feeling like, wow, did you? Out of all of the kids in the world, because when you're a child and you are first comprehending language, I mean, you believe everything. And I mean, I still believe it today, but obviously I understand the logistics. It wasn't every child in the world that they chose from. But adoption it's such a remarkable thing because it takes that extraordinary passion that a mother has, and certainly a father has as well. But for the moment, I'm just going to talk about mums, that a mother has for her child. And it moves it into the next realm that says, my love is infinite. The capacity that I have to love and to nurture is infinite. It is not restricted to biology. And then for me personally, that took me to a place where my love is not restricted to species either. That I have, as part of my journey, ended up rescuing a lot of animals and caring for a lot of animals and absolutely loving those animals in an unconditional manner. And I know that that's not for everyone, and I can probably hear a few people going, oh, that's nothing like having a baby. And sure, it isn't, but I'm just, working through how I've come to make my decisions, and in recognising that unconditional love and putting that into will I or won't I have a child, I thought, wow, if I have the capacity to love this deeply and it's not restricted to biology, then that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to love, all children and all animals and the entire planet with that level of unconditional love.
And so, Cherie, because you were adopted, and obviously you feel very fortunate with your family, do you feel that if you'd ever thought about having a child, would you have looked at adopting rather than having a biological child?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's another brilliant thing that my parents have done. And I should mention this too. So what happened was my mum and dad got together. They were 19. I think they were married at 20 or something. And my mum had been told at that early stage, because all she wanted was a baby. I mean, my mum, when she was 12 years old, she didn't go and have sleepovers with her friends. She would ask if she could borrow somebody's baby. And I don't know what was going on, but these mothers went, yeah, sure, take her for the night. And so then my mum would have babies sleep over, and she'd get up and she'd bottle feed them all night, and she just thought that was marvellous. All she wanted was a baby.
Yeah.
And so when she was around 18 or 19, she had a lot of issues with her ovaries and menstruation and stuff, and they discovered that she had a lot of cysts on her ovaries, and the doctor immediately said to her, look, I need to tell you this, that it's highly unlikely you will ever be able to have a child. And so my mum was just devastated, absolutely devastated. And so because she was so in love with my dad and they were already embarking on that plan to be married, she just said to him, you need to know that I can't have children, and the other thing that you need to know is that I unfortunately won't be able to marry you unless you agree that you will adopt children with me, because this means everything to me. And my dad said, of course I'll adopt kids, of course. And so mum and dad adopted my brother, who's 7 years older than me, and then they adopted my sister, different biological families, who is 5 years older than me. And then my mum actually fell pregnant.
Oh.
And she had Jason, beautiful boy, and he passed away from cot death at the age of 6 months old. And, I mean, that is just so huge. That is such an enormous thing to traverse emotionally and mentally, and because no children, because, you know, I'm in the Barossa Valley. I haven't always been here, but this is where I grew up and this is where my parents were at that time. Nobody else in the Barossa had lost a child to cot death or SIDS. It was very new. The
People
concept
don't really
was really
talk
new.
about it, do they, much at all?
And so my mum actually suffered a lot in that, because there was local gossip. You know, I can't really put it any other way. There was that kind of small town collective fear. Yeah. Oh, God, what has just happened? Did she do something to that babe? Like, that can't, whoa, I haven't heard of this before. You know, this can't happen to me. All of that stuff.
Yeah.
So my poor mum, she was really ostracised in that, and she had to deal with the police and a lot of questioning and blah, 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 in amongst her grief for her son. And then I think it was about 8 months later, she fell pregnant again. And Justin, she wasn't able to carry him full term. He was born prematurely, only 6 weeks prematurely, which now would be nothing.
Yeah.
But at the time, in a small country town without the facilities, he didn't live. And now you and I personally are not even close to where my mum was, but even talking about this, it puts you in that place of, whoa, that is such a heavy, murky, muddy, emotional space to be. And she went to our family doctor, gorgeous man, who, you know, had been there for my mum the whole time. And she just said, you need to fast track another baby. You need to help me adopt another baby really quickly. And he was great. He said to her, look, you need to grieve. And she said, no, I've done that. I just need a baby. He said, no, you need to grieve. In 6 months, come back to me and we'll have another talk. To the day, 6 months later, my mum went back with my dad, of course, and they both went in. She was like, okay, so back to getting me a baby. And he did everything he could to help that process. Of course, it was way easier to adopt a child back in the 70s. And so they were all packed up for their Easter holiday and about to leave. The phone rang. My dad answered it. Oh, we've got a baby for you, little baby girl. Would you like to come and get her? Apparently my dad said to my mum, do you want to go and get her now, or should we go after our holiday? my mum's sitting in the car going, are you mad? We're going right now. Yes, tell them we'll be there. So then they came down and they got me. But in telling that story, it shows you why I have this absolute belief in unconditional love, because on top of being adopted, I've had extremely raw conversations with my mum about how it feels to deliver a child that you have grown in your body and love that child, and how it feels to have a child placed in your arms against your heart and love that child. Yeah. She said, it's exactly the same. She said, it's exactly the same. And knowing that, I was like, wow, firstly, I have such an extraordinary mum. But secondly, that is so cool to know, because it opens up the scope of all possibilities. You know, that you will not only feel this feeling with this one set of circumstances by becoming a mother to a baby that you have birthed. Absolutely. You can have this feeling, you can access this feeling, this unconditional love in many ways. And most definitely. If I was to consider having a child, it would just be, and this is a really beautiful thing, it would just be normal for me to see that as adoption.
Yeah, and you just reminded me of that saying when you were talking about your mum like that, that mothers are born.
Mm,
It's not only the child that's born, it's the mother that's born at that time, regardless of how they've received that child that was meant to be theirs.
mm. Yeah, oh my God, your whole body just gets covered in goosebumps, doesn't it? It's such a gorgeous aspect of human emotion that
Mm,
that capacity sits there in everyone. And it's just a choice of how you decide to access that or what sparks that and where you decide for that to be sent out or placed.
absolutely.
Yeah,
And we've all got
yeah,
those nurturing, caring, loving qualities, and it's
without a
making
doubt.
that choice about how do we use those within our own lives. And many people, even if they can't have children or they've chosen not to, are still can be very mothering and very nurturing
Mm,
in the way they relate to people, and whether it's through their jobs or with their family, friends, or other children in their life. And so, have you ever felt any kind of pressure from your own family or friends for you to have that experience?
yeah, look, I think if you do show that love for children, that
Yeah,
it's another kind of joining of the dots that automatically happens from an outside perspective. Oh,
yeah,
you're going to be a natural, you're going to be such a good mum. And I'm like, whoa, hang on a second, who said anything about that? But because I also nannied for 9 years, so
yeah,
I've looked after children. Oh gosh, here in Melbourne, in Sydney, in London, in Thailand, in so many different places, fallen completely in love with them, experienced that unconditional love, talked nonstop about them to the point where my husband was like, whoa, okay, you've left work now, Cherie. You don't have to tell me how many times, somebody did a poo or what it looked like, or can you please just hold off on that? That's enough now. Because you just can't help it. You dive into that world. Well, I do,
yeah,
absolutely and completely. And it's brilliant and it's beautiful. But I think when that is your take on children, that you're not the person going, oh, no, 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 oh, no, don't give me the baby, or I won't know what to do with them. That says to people, oh, they're not going to be a mum. But when you're doing the opposite, when you are collecting a child up in your arms when their mum is just sitting there exhausted, staring at you with that look on her face like, oh God, thank you for doing that. I'm sorry, I've completely run out of energy. It's like, yeah, sure. That's why I'm here. I'm a nanny. I can jump in and have that energy. But in seeing that, it opened up an entirely different aspect of motherhood to me as well. The rose-coloured glasses that I'd grown up with, because, of course, my perspective was based on being a child, not on being a mother.
yes, yeah,
Once I started nannying, I was privy to, well, gosh, let's be honest, I was privy to everything. Within a family, you become extremely close and almost to the point where you are not invisible in the sense that you're not seen, but invisible in the sense that nobody has to cover anything up or compromise.
yeah,
If you're there and there's an argument going on between the parents of the family, they keep going even though you're there
yeah,
because you're just part of the scene. You're there every day. And so I really did have almost the best practice run, if you like, of adding to the information that I was collecting as to whether I would decide to have children or not. And wow, this is why I say it is such a massive decision.
yeah,
And I wonder if that enormity comes for some mothers after the fact.
Absolutely.
or before. And I've met both, and I've had extremely honest relationships with a lot of the women that I nannied for, especially in their vulnerability, their emotional vulnerability, absolutely exhausted, just nothing left.
Yeah.
Sucked dry.
Literally.
They haven't slept. Their nipples are bleeding. Their husbands just yelled at them. They're in that state where they're totally and absolutely spent.
Yeah.
And for me to be able to, pop in for the amount of time that I did, it gave them a place to not only gain some relief, but what it did was it showed me what they were needing relief from.
Yes.
And that's a very real thing. And that is by no means a suggestion that the joy and the beauty and the absolute sheer love that comes from each day that you spend with a child isn't there. But that's not all of it. That's not the complete picture. No. And this is something that I've spoken to a lot of my girlfriends about, the notion that when you don't have children, mothers will open up to you and they will tell you things that perhaps they wouldn't tell their friend who does have children.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what this is. I'm not sure why this exists within the circle of, and this is particularly a female thing, I think, or from my experience. I don't know why we don't tell each other the raw truth.
Well,
because
it's how we're conditioned, Cherie.
Yeah,
I mean, it's from where, from us being little, we're sold that whole image of, Prince Charming, getting married, meeting this nice man, having children, living happy ever after, and how motherhood is the most natural experience in the world. And of course it is if that's what you really want. But then it's almost like this, I think the media's got a lot to do with it as well. It's this perfect, shiny image of what motherhood should look like. And so then often people are scared to be honest about their experience because they fear being judged, or they fear that's not natural, in inverted commas, if they're struggling or if they're questioning their decision. Or I think it's really difficult, really, really challenging. You can't do right for doing wrong. And for me, I really feel there needs to be this gap that's closed so that all women are supporting each other, whatever their circumstances are, and recognising that what's right for you is not right for me necessarily, but it doesn't matter. We can still kind of respect that and appreciate that, because just based on a lot of what you've said, it really highlights that it's not the role of every woman to be a mother. Even if it's a biological ability, that is not every woman's path at all. And we've all got different abilities and different roles to play in being part of a much bigger picture, and meaning and purpose mean different things for every person.
Absolutely. And I think when you do start to take that overview effect, if you can, like, this is the weird thing, and I do want to say this as well, that I have never had that overwhelming biological urge, that a lot of women speak about that. And I've said to my mum before, do you think there's something wrong with me? I've never had that.
It's really
and I
common.
love kids, but I've never had that. And mum just says, well, no, not everyone has to have kids. And so, okay, I've been able to put that to rest, but it did bug me for a while. But because I've never had that, I've been able to step back a little bit and see this as a project, like I was saying before. And in doing that and combining that with this ridiculous deep thinking that I do, there's just so much more to this picture. In my other kind of life, I interviewed one of our ex-premiers in South Australia, extraordinary man actually, Lynn Arnold, And I was doing an interview with him, and he heads up foster care through Anglicare. Such an incredible man in regards to what he has done to help children and the whole process and awareness around fostering. Anyway, when I was interviewing him, he told me that 45,000 children in Australia are currently in foster care.
Wow.
45,000 children. So I take little snippets of information like this and they immediately go straight to my emotional being, where I just feel, oh, wow. Like, and I think in being adopted as well, there's that extra aspect where I think, wow, that could have been me.
Yeah.
That total breaking of the family unit.
Yeah.
And so this is another big part of the picture. And it's something that I know is not lovely to talk about, and I totally get that. But it had to be part of my overall approach in order to really make my decision. I had to look at the dark as well as all that stuff that you said before that we've been sold as that fairy tale.
Yeah.
You know, that every day, like 21,000 people die from being hungry.
Yeah.
And this is our own species. You know, for me, because I look at the plight of animals on this planet so much, and my heart is so connected to that. You know, I'm not ashamed, but I can honestly say that I sometimes forget people. I do.
Yeah.
I sometimes forget people because I think, oh no, we're all taken care of. It's just animals that are suffering at our hands, but we're all taken care of. But that's not true. We're not all taken care of. We're not actually taking care of each other in a way that when you have experienced that unconditional love, you know is available. You know that we could all extend that unconditional love and love any baby, any child. And so if we're looking at some of these aspects of the story, you know, the stuff that makes everybody go quiet at a dinner table, the fact that we already have well over 7 billion people on the planet, and our resources, our finite resources, how long they're likely to last, the toll that humans are directly taking on the planet. Yeah. You know, oh my God, the figures are just, they freak me out. And so I actually can't go into it too deeply too often.
Yeah.
But, you know, things like global aquifers. So we're currently pumping out 3.5 times faster the water that sits in all of the global aquifers than rainfall is falling to recharge them. You know, you don't have to be that clever to go, oh, wow, that's not going to end well.
No.
You know, and the fact that, I mean, what is the percentage? It's something like half the vertebrate species. So I'm talking air, water, land. Since 1970, half those species have been lost worldwide.
Yeah, that's quite astounding, isn't it, when you think,
you know,
like that?
And then you just go, wow, this is our impact on the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And when I start talking about this, I can feel the constriction in people, and it's why I don't say it very often, because I don't want to be, you know, oh, here she comes, Doomsday Debbie. But if these things aren't spoken about, then what we're all running on is that fairy tale. But the result of that fairy tale is this nightmare, you know, and it might not be a nightmare for your baby, but far out, there are some really bleak lives being lived, you know, and it's that I consider when I think about, okay, how can we help here?
Yeah.
And I know that this is the subject that nobody wants to talk about, but we can help by seeing ourselves as a collective species and caring for all of the souls that are already
here. That's right. Now
there are so many. There are so many.
But it's true. But in terms of fostering and adoption, now these are not easy processes, are they? And I've heard stories of people who have been desperate to adopt a child, and they go into this process that seems to go on for years, and then there's never any guarantee of them actually receiving a child at the end of that, even though, as you say, there are so many children who need love and support. So it seems to be becoming increasingly difficult for people to be able to access. So why is that, do you think?
Oh gosh, wow, that's another huge subject. But I think that, you know, there is business that sits around new people, you know, and that business is them, you know, from all of the checkups and the tests and all of that you need as you're going through your prenatal stuff, and then there's the birthing process, and then there's, wow, got to jab in all those vaccines, and then we've got to, you know, oh my God, this is when I start to sound like such a conspiracy theorist. But you know, there is business around new people, you know, that does generate that spin of money and things and stuff. And essentially, if the way that we're voting, and oh Lord, isn't that another massive topic? Wow, because how does that even reflect who we would like to have leading us? But if we were able, let's say this, if we were able to vote for the people that we honestly believed had the people in their hearts and at the forefront of their decision making, then that would also be a vote for legislation that made it as easy and as safe for the child who is being adopted. Because, you know, the last thing I want to suggest is, let's just give a child to anyone. Don't worry about it. Make it easy. Better off, you know, with somebody than being in an orphanage. It's not that. Yes. None of this is simple. No, none of it. Course not. Because we're talking about human beings. We're talking about, you know, that spark, that extraordinary miracle that sits within each of us that makes us alive. So then everything becomes extraordinary, and we can either go, oh, this is hugely difficult and we're not going to look at it, or, this is my way of simplifying things, we bring it back to what's needed. What's needed? That child needs love, firstly. Because, I mean, how many tests have there been done on poor monkeys, they always get tested on, but how many tests have been done to show that without touch, without that nurturing that comes from the connection of a body to a body, that children will not develop. It's not food that is the first thing.
Yeah, that's right. It's not rocket science, is it? You know, that people need touch and nurturing.
And so if we look at what's needed, that child needs love. That child needs ongoing, you know, support and care, and all these things. The massive aspect, the massive undertaking that it is to decide to be a parent. Yeah. As I said, there is no bigger than that to me. And if we were to make the decisions from that place, our legislation would surely reflect that. But we all know, unfortunately, that's not what it's about. You know, our structure seems to be, and of course you can work outside of this in making your decisions, but wow, you need to work really hard to go against the grain sometimes, and you need to do a lot of personal research to discover what the big picture is. But if we could actually just bring it back to how are we doing as a species, a collective species? Who's not doing so well? How can we look after that? you know, that I think that is a place that everyone can access, but it's just what triggers that.
Yeah.
And oh wow, that's just different for everybody, isn't it?
It really is. It really is.
It's
And
just huge. But you know, I did a nutrition course through Cornell a couple of years ago, and they were talking about you know, the oceans and blah blah blah, and you know, because this is another huge thing. If you decide to eat a certain way, then you're going against the grain, and if you decide to I don't know, but I put not having children in that realm of, oh, they're not doing what, you know, is expected. So it's, you know, you're not normal. But with understanding all of that, like, oh wow, they were talking about how many disposable nappies get used. And so
yeah, I can
Australia
imagine
is,
that figure is quite
oh wow,
horrifying.
Australia is nowhere near as bad as the States. So Australia's 2 billion nappies go into landfill each year, 2 billion. But in the States, 27.4 billion disposable nappies go into landfill. So
Wow.
they calculated that that's actually enough to go to the moon and back in nappies 9 times.
Oh my goodness.
Does that just make your stomach flip a little bit? Like,
it's mind-blowing, isn't it, really?
actually go, and I'm like, whoa. You know, because I've hung out in India and Thailand where children aren't wearing nappies. They're just like, and I'm not saying, right, that's it, you can't have children because they come with nappies. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying this is part of the picture, this massive, complicated picture that is so much bigger than just, are you going to have kids? See, I don't, as you can probably tell, I don't think on that plane.
It's such a complex topic with so many layers to it and so many different factors that often people maybe don't explore until after the fact when they've already got that child and they're having that experience. And so also wanted you to share a little bit about your business, because I perceive that to be a very sort of feminine and creative way of expressing yourself, which is another way of redirecting that energy. You know, you're birthing your creativity in that way through your work. And so would you like to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, look, I see that as the exact same thing, actually. That creative force is that creative force. And one thing that you can do with that creative force is create another life. Extraordinary. What a creation. You can also create many other things.
Yes.
And no more or less important, you know, maybe not so mind-blowing as a child. I mean, my God, there's nothing bigger. But that's the creative force that I see as being equal in its pursuits. And actually, it reminds me, a good friend of mine, she's a piano composer, and she lives in Dubai, and we Skype all the time. We're childhood friends, and so we've both grown up in very similar conditioning, I suppose, when it comes to family and whether you decide to have children or not. And she rang me and she said to me, wow, okay, I need to tell you, this is the first time I've ever felt this. I think that I want to have a baby. And I went, oh, wow, okay. What does it feel like? Like, what is that feeling? Tell me. And so she was explaining the feeling and this desire to create, like there's something, Cherie, I really need to get this out there. I need to make this. I need to make this happen. Anyway, we had that conversation, and then it was about a week later she called me, and I thought, oh wow, she's calling me to tell me she's having a baby. Like, wow, this has moved so quickly. And she goes, okay, massive revelation number 2. I said, yes. She said, it was a composition. I've written it.
Oh, wow.
I spent 7 days in my studio. I didn't come out her husband, Paul, is gorgeous. He was just delivering food in there. She wrote this absolutely stunning piece of music. Like, I'm talking whole symphony. She's on that level. And she said, that was it, Cherie. That was what I wanted to create. And I said, really? And she goes, yeah, it's not a baby. It wasn't a baby. I just needed to create this. It was huge. And I was like, wow. And that was kind of the first time that I thought, okay, so this is a thing.
Yeah,
this
definitely.
Creative force is not just about children. And I think that, back to your point about the fairy tale that we get told, it's perhaps the only option that circulates in our sphere of thinking as, well, that must be that.
Yes, yeah.
That must be that drive that you're feeling. But maybe it's not.
Well,
you know?
That's right.
And
maybe it isn't, because there are a lot of people who, I mean, if you type into Google, I wish I'd never had a child. Sadly, sadly, there are a lot of forums where, you know, people have had that experience and then really wish that they hadn't. It's not to say they don't love their children.
No, that's so not the case.
No. So I just think it's a very complex, you know, it's a very complex thing. But often so many women, and I've had these conversations of whereby, as we mentioned earlier, they just never realised that that was not something they could consider not doing.
And that creative force, I mean, you know, I've actually, I have, you know, amazing girlfriends. Oh, wow. I'm super grateful for them because they're all very honest about all this stuff. But with one of my girlfriends, I've seen her go through motherhood, and she's such a brilliant mum, really honest, really raw, really in it, never pretends it's something that it's not, but absolutely embraces the beauty of it and the joy when it's there. You know, she's amazing. And now that her children are at school, she's got this whole creative thing going on, painting, and doing all the, and just experiencing all these different creative outlets. And I'm like, wow, was that your third child? Is that your third child just there? All this creative stuff, you know, because it seems to be that never stops either. That's something that maybe it does with some women. I certainly don't know every woman's thoughts, but just looking around at my experiences with my friends, that notion of, okay, I feel this desire, this intense, overwhelming desire to create. I'm going to have a child. You have a child. Oh, wow, here's that feeling again. Oh, maybe I need to have another child. Yep. Oh, here's that feeling again. You know, and it's like, it's always going to be there because that's your creative force. And what a brilliant thing to know. Wow, this is always going to be available to me, and I get to choose. Shall I make a baby? Shall I do something else? And so, you know, with the teas, wow, sorry, I really digressed there. Getting back to your question about my business. With the teas, that's exactly how it happened. You know, I'm always feeling that creative urge. And maybe when I said before, I've never felt that biological urge, maybe I felt it heaps of times, but my interpretation is different. Ooh, what's the next project? Yeah. You know, okay, I'm going to rip the back of the house off and we're going to renovate that whole section. Or, oh my gosh, I'm going to go out and save a racehorse. You know, it's that next project thing. Yeah. And so, yeah, the teas came from that, and they're just part of that ongoing creative project, you know, because even within businesses that are creative, it doesn't stop as soon as you've created the business.
No, it's a constant evolution. Yeah. I mean, just anyone having their own business is a constant. I think there's no better personal development course, and there really isn't, because it's such a reflection of you and where you're at, and really, if it's completely stagnant and never changes, then I would be questioning why that is
Yeah.
actually. But
Yeah.
no, I mean, look, you make those beautiful teas. I love that full moon chai.
Oh, yeah, that's so good, isn't it?
Yeah, no, very good. I mean, it's just nice. You know, I am a chai-aholic, and so good chais always really stay with me.
Yum.
But
Yum.
no, but thank you so much for your time, Cherie, and
That's
your
a pleasure.
thoughts. It's such an
That's a
important
pleasure.
topic. And so, can you share where we can find you online and your beautiful teas?
Yeah, sure. So you can go to scullerymade.org and you'll find the website, and there's a blog with lots of food and recipes and stuff, and just a little bit more about what we do out here on the hill in the Barossa Valley, a farm that doesn't, farm animals, but just rescues.
Thank you for listening to Unclassified Woman. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. For information on events and services, connect with Michelle at michellemariemcgrath.com.